Good morning. This is the stakeholder meeting for the full day kindergarten new update that we had as part of SB 75. I'm going to introduce everybody first. I'm Brian LePask. I'm the operations and policy manager at OPSC and program services. To my right is Joshua Potter, the supervisor for the full day kindergarten program. To his right is Lindsay Gordon. To my left is Alexandra Ruliloba and Justin Ng. All these folks you see up here are the ones that are working on your full day kindergarten applications, and I'm glad that they're all here with me today. So why are we here today? As part of this year's Education Omnibus Trailer Bill, part of what it allocated to our program is $300 million more for full day kindergarten projects. In addition to the funds being increased, there was a lot of changes this time. Some significant changes to the program, the structure of it, the way that we're going to be applying. And so we have gone through and made changes to our regulations for the program, as well as the forms, the grant agreement. So we're going to be going over all those changes today. We're hoping that we could get some feedback from all of you, well, a few of you that are here. If you have any suggestions, although we largely think that the changes we made are really straight from the statute. So we haven't really done anything outside of what those changes were that I see anyway. So a little bit of background on the program. This program provides one-time grants to either construct new facilities or retrofit existing facilities for the purpose of providing full-day kindergarten. The new statute limits a portion of the program's funding to school districts that will be converting part-day kindergarten programs to full-day. And we'll get into exactly what that means, but that's a really clear goal of the new allocation, is to ensure that we're encouraging that part-day to full-day conversion. Some of the other highlights, formerly the matching share was 50% matching from the districts for new construction, 40% for retrofit. Both types of projects will now be 75 state, 25 district. And we're actually going to be going back and adjusting the ones that we previously apportioned in the first two rounds, or the first round and the upcoming second round, or the upcoming third round, I should say. Also, for the upcoming next two rounds, the third and fourth round, only projects that are converting from part day to full day will receive funding. If there's funds left after that, for the fifth and final round, any districts will be able to participate. So it'll be opened up again the way the first and second rounds were. Savings and the interest realized from savings will be able to be retained for third, fourth, and fifth round projects. And we're going to go back and well, we already have actually. I think we've already, any adjustments that we've made to new construction eligibility, school facility program new construction eligibility from the first two rounds for classrooms that were added in those projects, we're backing those out. Going forward, there will be no adjustment happening to new construction eligibility at all. So it'll just be FDK. If there is classrooms added, we're not adding them to the district's inventory. So that provision has gone away. So I'm going to let Josh go through the more nuanced details of everything that's in your packet. We do have packets at the back of the room if you haven't got one already. And then when he's done with this presentation, we'll be inviting you to come up and have any kind of comments that you'd like to add or questions you have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh.
That work now? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for those that are in attendance in person, as well as those that have tuned in on the webcast. Like Brian said, there were quite a few changes that were called out in the statute, so we'll go through the packet for those that have the packet or those that are viewing online that have it. If you want to kind of follow along with me, we'll start at the staff analysis portion. The first change is actually, as Brian kind of mentioned, to the program eligibility criteria. As pointed out in the statute, for the fiscal years of the 1920 and the 2021, the only funds that can go out would be for those districts that are actually converting a part day to a full day program. So unlike the first two rounds where a district that was already doing a full-day program could still apply if they still lacked the facilities, that's not the case for the third and fourth rounds, which we'll kind of go into the details on later. Just like with the 18-19 budget, we do have a time frame in order to get this money apportioned out. So we do have the 3-year program on that. So with what we have set up in here for any funds remaining, again, this is still called out in the statute, concluding the 2020 to 2021 fiscal years, we can revert back to the all facilities or all sites can actually apply. Application submittal requirements is pretty much the same. It's still going to require the 7001 to be submitted. This can be still in a design format, so nothing has changed in that. If you are coming in for full funding, we would need all the approvals and everything on that 7001 would need to be completed. For the design apps, we would still need the site maps, and we'll still get into those details later on in this. Another change to the eligibility is that the statute now requires that the school districts provide enrollment for the current year, as it was in the initial establishment of full-day kindergarten facilities grant program. It is not to provide for growth, it is for current students, but we would need the current year as well as the immediate 3 preceding years. With that, in collaboration with the California Department of Education, we would be looking at the facilities that exist, as well as that enrollment to determine whether a school district is restricted to only being able to do retrofit or if they would still be eligible for new construction. For the funding, as Brian said, we did have $300 additional million put towards the program, less the DGS administrative costs. That leaves us with $292.5 million to apportion. We are proposing the additional rounds, which would be 3 additional rounds. The third and fourth round would be in those fiscal years that would be strictly for those that are converting from a part day to a full day program. That 5th round would be opened up after the close of that 2020 to 2021 fiscal year in order to allow those other districts to apply who currently have a full day program. We are not restricting the amount of money to each of the rounds. It will be all of the money will be on the table for the 3rd round. Anything that is remaining would then go to the 4th round. And then again, if anything is still remaining, concluding the 4th round, it would go to that 5th round. For the matching share requirement, as Brian kind of touched on, the statute did call out for a change to that matching share rather than the 50-50 for new construction or the 60-40 for modernization. It does change it to a 75 state and 25 district. That is specific to only be for those that are converting from a part day to a full day program. So in the 3rd and 4th rounds, those would be exclusive to those districts converting, so they would be in the 75-25 split. In that 5th round, any districts who apply who are not converting would still be on the 50-50 and 60-40 splits. Also, as mentioned, we would be retroactively adjusting any of those districts from the 1st and 2nd rounds that receive funding would be adjusted to a 75-25 split, again, if they are converting from a part day to a full day program. Going into the calculation to kind of display how this looks, the statute still calls for the modernization and new construction base grants based on the pupil amounts from the current year's CCIs. So the actual base grant amount and the calculation for the total project would not change. The only thing that is changing in the funding is going to be that 75-25 split. So we've put 2 different charts in here to kind of show how that is. So in example number 1, which is the new construction project, it is a 2-classroom example. On the left side, you would see, as it is currently set on a 50-50 split, we would go through the new construction base grant. We included a few of the additional grants, the site development, fire alarm, fire sprinkler, project assistance, which gives you to that 50% state share of $841,758. Since it's a 50-50 match, it would be duplicated to the district share for a total project cost of $1,683,516. That same numeric is copied into the chart next door on the right side of that and shows that the total project cost is still the same at $1,683,516. The change then is the 75-25 split is adjusted, and the total state share would now be $1,262,637 versus the previous version of a 50-50 split at $841,758. And then the district share at 25% would be $420,879. On the next page, we gave a secondary chart to kind of break down a retrofit. Again, this does still go into a 75-25 for the conversion from a part day to a full day. So the left side chart on the retrofit is, again, a 2-classroom example. It shows the base grant of $232,200, the supplemental grants, site development, fire alarm, and project assistance, for a total state share at 60% of the project cost of $328,480, and the district share at 40% being $218,897 for that total project cost of $547,467. A lot of numbers to throw out there. For the right side of that chart, again, this just kind of shows visually how that 75-25 is applied. It's not changing the total project cost. So again, you see that the project cost is still $547,467, and the state share change is now to $410,600, and the district share at 25 is $136,867. So we put these in here as a visual to really show how that is. It's not changing, again, the actual base grants, which pull from the pupils. It's just changing that project cost split to the 75-25. One change that we did incorporate that was not in the statute that we think would actually be a little bit more equitable for the districts, and this is definitely one of the things we would like to get insight from the stakeholders on, is for the tiebreakers. In the first establishment for the FTK program, we had included the lottery draw for any districts who are tied for preference points. So for example, for any district that did not receive the financial hardship 40 points, if they had 86.3 FRPM, they would get the 26 points because it's a rounding process. If you had a district that was 86.2, they would also get the 26 points. So again, you create a tie. So we've included an additional level to the waves for the tiebreakers to default to the actual FRPMs to the first decimal. So again, in that circumstance of 86.3 and 86.2, sticking true to the statute of a higher priority for the higher FRPM, the 86.3 would automatically get funding first. We would only default to a lottery draw if they had exactly the same FRPM. Going into some of the other changes for savings use, there is included in statute, all applicants can retain the savings, so including those that are financial hardship. They are still tied to the timeframes as far as when the expenditure reports need to be submitted and that savings report, and any savings beyond that would need to be returned. But instead of the first two rounds where financial hardship districts could not retain the savings for 1 year, they are included in the grouping of non-financial hardship districts that can retain that savings for 1 year. And there is specifics on what those can be expended on. In addition to the high priority capital outlay facilities needs, they can also expend those savings on professional development to build capacity for the implementation of a full day program, instructional materials to build the capacity for the implementation of the program. And those are actually the two additional ones in there. As Brian did talk about, the statute does actually include that there will be no adjustments to the SFP eligibility for new construction for the districts that receive funding for new construction. We have, in fact, reversed the adjustments that were made for those that received funding from the first round, so those have already been done and approved. And as we are concluding the second round processing, there has been no adjustments for those, and there will be no adjustments when they are completed. That concludes the actual cover item itself. I did want to go through and kind of highlight a few things. We do have included in the packets the regulation packet that we put together with the adjustments or the changes in there. We do also have the forms and the grant agreement. There were not a lot of changes to these things. All of it's kind of been spelled out already in the specifics of what we've covered, but I did want to go through some of the things and highlight a few of them. On page 8 of your packet in the definitions, we did actually include a definition of full day kindergarten program as it relates to Education Code section 8973. We received a lot of questions regarding that in the first two filing rounds, so we added it as a definition in here for clarity for the districts and the applicants. Going into page 11, as we get into the regulation section 1860.3, which is our general, we In order to delineate the monies that are being apportioned, we actually put them in, anything that came from the 1819 budget is actually associated with 1860.3A, and anything associated with the 300 million for the new funds is actually associated as 1860.3B. This actually helps clarify things as we get into, especially if we have a fifth funding round, where only those that are converting receive the 50 or the 75-25 splits, as well as when we have any funds returned, we need to make sure that anything we can get back out is delineated of where it came from. So going through the regulation packet, if you happen to identify those references, that's why we did that separation for those monies. Going into page number 13, which is your 1860.6, which is your application submittals. We did actually call out here those funding rounds proposals. 1860.6C would be the third funding round, which would actually is proposed to be for April 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2020. Again, there would be no cap to the funds allotted to that round. It would be whatever we have, the 292.5 million. Anything remaining would go to the fourth round, which we have proposed as January 4th, 2021 to February 2nd, 2021. And should any funding be remaining after the fourth round, we would have that fifth round. Again, we have to have that in order for all the sites to be able to apply, including those that currently offer, would have to be after the 2020-2021 fiscal year. So we propose July 1st, 2021 to July 30th, 2021. Each one of those rounds allows for an equal amount of days to apply for the program. On page 17, it kind of has a pullover from 1860.11 for the new construction from page 10. It provides a chart down there still outlining where that split is. So again, even though in the third and fourth filing rounds it would only be for those converting, it does show that when you're converting from a part day to a full day, it would be if you're not converting from a part day to a full day, it would still be a 50-50 split. And if you are converting, it would be a 75-25. Towards the bottom of the page, we included the same chart for retrofit projects. Those that are not converting would still be at a 60-40 split, and those that are converting would be at a 75-25. Moving on to page 19. This goes into our actual tiebreaker concept, as I explained, where we would actually default to the first decimal place of the FRPM actual numbers. Again, the funding concept would still run in the two waves as it did in the first two rounds, where we would fund the district's first priority projects in order of their preference points, and then the second wave would include anything remaining beyond the first priority projects going in that preference point priority order. And it just adds that tiebreaker concept of the default to the actual FRPM, and the second tiebreaker option would be the lottery draw. Both of those waves are included when you go between pages 19 into 20. Page 21 is where we get into the project savings. Again, this does outline that even the districts in the third and fourth round, or any of the applicants that receive the funds from the 300 million, do get to retain their savings, even if they are financial hardship, as long as they are expended for the specified criteria, which includes that professional development and the materials in order to build the capacity of implementing a full-day program. Moving on to page 26, which would be your 7001 form. For the first two pages of the form, we just updated the instructions to capture this, but on the actual first page of what is filled out and completed by the district, which again is page 26 in the handout, we have added a dual scope option. In the first two rounds, we did identify there were quite a few sites that maybe didn't have the capacity to only do new construction, whether they were restricted by campus size or just keeping their kindergarten complex together. We added this option to be able to select a dual scope, and then again, if you're doing a dual scope design or not. We would, for accounting purposes, internally separate those to capture the accounting process of that. So when we do actually complete those expenditure reports, the districts would still need to separate those costs delineated with each side of that scope, whether it's the new construction or the retrofit. But for simplicity and for expeditious approach for the application process, we added that in here to avoid having to do a double submittal of an application. On page 27, which includes the certification portion for the districts, You'll see in the right-hand column, the third bullet from the bottom, since there is a different share split for those that are converting from a part-day to a full-day program, we've included a simple certification section for districts. You have two options in here. The first one is to select that the full-day kindergarten instruction is not currently offered at the project site, or if there is a currently offering, you would check that box and include the date of when the district or the site began offering that full-day kindergarten. Since you can still have started after the beginning of this fiscal year. So if maybe a district is applying when we come into the third round and they are just starting it this year, they would still be eligible for the funding. But this way, if there is a district that started prior to the statute that gave us the additional monies, at the fifth round, we would know if the district would be eligible for the 75-25 or the 50-50, 60-40 split. So this is a real easy way to certify to that and for us to be able to validate that as far as what the share would be for the project. There were no changes necessary to the 7002, which is the expenditure report for the first setting as far as actual the expenditures. But on the savings portion, and you'll see in the 7003, we actually included an additional blurb in there at the bottom, which is a certification. And again, this is going into the different changes that have been allocated for the savings portion. So since financial hardship districts could participate in the retention of savings for that additional year, we needed to change the language to that. You'll see that's captured in there. And going into the grant agreement, we really just added the savings aspects of it as far as including that the financial hardship districts could retain those savings if they are doing the conversion and receiving the money from the $300 million. And so we've actually included those different expenditures that are allowed in there as far as the professional development as well as the materials in order to implement the full day program. On page 40, which is still in the grant agreement, there is an additional add-in there, and this is just for the accounting and audits process in there. It does spell out in here how those savings or those expenditures can be retained. Again, with those that in the fifth round, should we be able to have monies to a portion in that round, if they are not converting, they would not be able to retain those savings. And so we've actually just spelled out that it can be up to 2 years because it just depends on whether that expenditure report or that savings report is coming in. So that was a change in that grant agreement as well. There's really no other highlight changes to go through. Hoping that some people had an opportunity to go through the packet ahead of time, or if you're going through it at this moment. If there are any additional questions or comments, we would welcome anybody to come up, and please feel free to address us on any questions or comments you may have. We do also, for those that may not have noticed it, we do have a sign-in in the back as well, so if there's any other correspondence we need to follow up with you on, we would capture that information off of there as well. So with that, if nobody else has any other comments, I'd like to open it up.
Yes, please do sign in if you haven't already, at least before you leave. We'd appreciate that. Also, I forgot to mention up front, when we're done with our presentation and our questions, we have a lottery happening today. It's pretty cool. Hopefully it goes well. It is for, the team has been concluding processing of round 2 projects, and there's 4 projects at the end that are vying for the remaining funding, so we're going to be actually determining their funding order when we conclude today. So if you want to stick around, you can check that out. Should be entertaining. And it'll also be on the webcast if you want to watch that later as well. So please come up and have any comments. If you have any comments, we'd like you to come up and speak. I know there's not too many of you here, but we would love to hear from everybody if you have anything to offer. Could start handing out Starbucks cards or something.
Good morning. My name is Abel Guillen with CFW, and I had a question related to the order of applications, and I may have missed this. Is this going to be a rolling application period like you did for the last round, or would it be on a first-come, first-served basis?
The third, fourth, and fifth round will be duplicative of the first and second rounds. It would be a filing period. No applications could be received prior to the opening of the round, and no applications may be received at the end of the round. And the funding order is determined by the preference points, so there is no order based on date received.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sumit Goyal. I'm also with CFW. I had 2 questions. The that I'm hoping you could help address. One is for the next round, which begins in April 2020, is all funding available to be distributed if sufficient applications are received that meet the criteria?
Yes, we did not set aside any monies for additional rounds. We are opening the third round up would be for all monies remaining out of the 300, which would be the 292.5. So it is an open table for all of that monies. To stick to the statute, which has clearly delineated that it would like to support those that are in the conversion from a part day to a full day, we have not reserved any of that money. So if we do happen to be oversubscribed, all of that money would go out in that round.
Okay, thank you. And then the handout made a reference to CDE being consulted for their recommendation as to whether projects would be qualifying for new construction or retrofit. What criteria will CDE use to make that recommendation?
We do still need to conclude those meetings with CDE to delineate that specific attribute. There are certain things that would be looked at from the OPSC side as far as enrollment, and that's why there is the current year enrollment that needs to be submitted as well as the immediate preceding 3 years to identify if there is a decline. Maybe it's plateauing or maybe it's actually going up, and in that case, if there is a need for additional facilities, obviously if all facilities on the site are occupied and loaded fully, there would be no additional facilities to retrofit, so there would be no other option but new construction. However, if there are additional facilities on site, especially within or near that kindergarten complex where they can actually be retrofitted and the enrollment has declined, then it would be stuck to a retrofit project. But we are still continuing to conclude those ideas with CDE. So we'll have those in that final stakeholder meeting, and then the board item that goes to October is our plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're planning a second meeting, follow-up to this one on October 15th. I don't think the location has been determined yet. That'll be on our website, but we could maybe have some more information on that for the next meeting on the 15th of October. In addition to the folks we have here today, if you have those of you that have are watching this now or see it later on the webcast, if you wanted to send information into us via email, we'd be happy to review that and incorporate it into our comments for the next meeting. Again, we want as much feedback as we can get. Even though a lot of this stuff comes straight out of the statute, we'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So there's that option available to you as well if you'd prefer to do it over email. We'd be happy to look at those.
Hi, good morning. Mike Satley, Hemet Unified School District. Question for you. So as far as the fund release, just so we're clear, we're just going through that. As far as once we receive the funds, you have 1 year to spend the money and report, or what's the status as far as timeline there?
Correct, yes. On the timelines, once the full fund release has been submitted, the district would have 1 year to complete the project or submit the actual expenditure report. So there is 1 year from that release to the point at which the expenditure report needs to be submitted. Beyond that, for the savings, you have an additional 1 year to complete that, and then at that point, any savings that still remain would have to be returned at that point.
So once the district is notified in sometime after April, how much time does the district have to ask for the fund release at that point too?
Are you talking about for anybody that gets a portion in that April round?
Assuming you get a portion in April.
It would be a filing round in April, so we haven't determined an actual board date. It's all going to depend on the volume of applications that get submitted of when we actually can take the item to the board for those approvals. It would be 1 year from that apportionment date, so when the SAB approves those projects, so it wouldn't be the April date.
Okay, so a few months after, somewhere in there.
Correct.
You have 1 year essentially to complete the project.
Correct.
And then 1 year after for savings.
Correct.
Okay. Has there been any comments or questions about that time period to say, hey, 1 year's quick? If, let's say a district doesn't have, let's say the money to put up front, hardship or whatever, to start a project from scratch, if they haven't already started on it, to start a project from scratch, to bid it and build it may be a tight time frame, especially in today's market.
It is a fairly tight time frame because of the restraints that we have from the funds coming from general fund. We only have 3 years in order to get those funds out. And so it is a very expeditious and very aggressive program in that nature. For those that are still kind of trying to get things together, Unlike SFP, where in order to qualify for design or in the full-day kindergarten facilities grant program, you have the advanced funding, even districts who are non-financial hardship can apply for that, and you can get some funds early on to get the project started. With those that receive a full funding apportionment or state allocation board approval, they have 6 months to submit for that full fund release. Those that are getting an advance actually have 1 year to come in for that, so it does kind of buy a little bit of time in that realm for those that might be concerned with timeframes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hello.
Hi, Julie Strauss with School Advisors. Just as a point of clarification, these projects do not need to participate in a priority and funding round and certify, correct?
That is correct. Full-day kindergarten facilities grant program projects do not participate in PIF. The money coming out of general fund means that it's readily available, which is why we can be expeditious on it. So those that receive an advance fund release, once the allocation board approval is done, the advance amount can be released nearly immediately upon a grant execution. And then the same thing for the full fund release. Once that's approved and the full fund release is sent in, we can work on the grant agreement and get the actual warrant issued. So it is a very quick process and no PIF.
These projects do have the traditional 180 days to submit a fund release from time of approval, correct?
They actually have, it is 180 days for the full funding release to submit. That is correct. For those,
Okay.
again, that are advanced, they actually have 1 year before they can submit their, or they have 1 year to submit their final approvals and their full fund release.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Getting some breaking news over my phone that there may be a conflict with the cash conference for our next stakeholder meeting. So I wanted to say that we may be reevaluating that date and to stay tuned. We would certainly do an email blast if we do change it. It'll be posted on our website. So I guess that 10:15 meeting date is a little tentative right now. This is your chance. Anyone else? Nothing? Going once? Oh, here we go. Okay. I knew if I coerced it.
Regarding districts that apply for hardship, can you talk about the criteria that's required to submit applications for hardship, if that's different than it has been in the past?
There is no change to the requirement of how you apply to the program. If you are a financial hardship district, it is still locked to the same criteria as far as the financial hardship qualifications, but it does not change any application process between the third, fourth, and fifth rounds as opposed to the first and second rounds. It is the same.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you coerced. Rebecca Curley from the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you've done on this program. It is a really important program to our schools, and especially we appreciate the attention that you've given to the baseline eligibility issue to apply that retroactively to the projects that already received funding in the first 2 rounds. We very much appreciate that. That was one of our primary concerns. We were really pleased to see that addressed in the trailer bill, and thank you for your work on extending that to all of the projects. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, one more opportunity. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. We are going to have the lottery, like I said. We're going to do that here in just a minute. And again, if you have any comments you didn't think of while you were here, or if you're watching this later and have any ideas, please send them to us. We'd be happy to collect those. You could email any one of us. You can find our information on the website. For that, I won't tell our emails right now, but you can find them. It's pretty easy to find on the OPSC website. And we would look forward to receiving that. And I guess with that, we'll see you next time. But we are going to do our lottery here, so stick around if you want to check that out.
Thank you again.
So we have a whiteboard here that Alexandra is going to hold up that shows the numbers of the ping pong balls that are going into the ping pong ball
Jason,
turner.
if you don't mind, go ahead and show the ball numbers to the camera too, so we can verify
Yep.
that those are the ones that are going in.
Starting with 1 for Alisal Union.
One for Alisal Union.
Oh, shoot.
And this order is determined by the districts are in alphabetical order.
Yeah, we just put these in alphabetical order.
1 going in. 2 for Anaheim Elementary.
Two's for Anaheim.
3 is for Armona Union Elementary.
3 is for Armona.
And then 4 is for Fontana Unified.
And 4 is Fontana.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
So counterclockwise.
Okay. Just gonna mix it up a little bit first. All right, ready? Too fast.
Come on.
All right, I'm gonna slow it down.
Oh, there we go. Okay. And
And it's number 4
number 4.
for Fontana Unified.
So Fontana, yeah, will be first.
Yep.
We're gonna continue until we get the entire order here.
All right.
Yeah. This is riveting. Oh, there we go. Okay, number 2, it looks like.
Yep. Number 2 for Anaheim Elementary.
So number 2 is Anaheim.
Okay, there we go.
And it's number 1 for Alisal Union.
Alisal is the third one.
Yep. And so the 4th
And-
would be Armona Union.
Fourth and remaining would be Armona.
Okay. So let's go ahead and read off the order there again.
So the funding order as determined would be Fontana would be first, Anaheim would be second, Alisal third, and Armona fourth. And again, this is to determine the tiebreaker funding order for the second round.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our meeting for today. Thank you all for coming.